Before we dive into today's story, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us till the very end. And if this story moves you, share your thoughts in the comments and send it to a friend who needs to hear it. Now, let's begin. It was exactly midnight when Ava Miles' phone buzzed on the dashboard of her car. She almost ignored it, thinking it was just a notification. But then she saw the name on the screen, Dad. Her father, Mark Miles, never called this late. Ava answered quickly, smiling faintly. Dad, are you okay? His voice came through shaky, clipped, like each word cost him effort. Ava, don't go home. Stay where you are. The smile fell from her face. What? Why? But he didn't explain. He just said it again, firmer this time. Don't go home. Promise me. Ava gripped the steering wheel tighter. She had just finished a brutal 12-hour nursing shift and had been counting the minutes until she could collapse into bed. Dad, you're scaring me. What's wrong? There was a pause. She could hear his breathing, heavy, uneven. Just trust me, he said quietly. Please, stay away until I tell you it's safe. His tone, desperate, almost breaking, made her chest tighten. Mark Miles was not a man who panicked. He had been a firefighter for 30 years, running into burning buildings when everyone else was running out. And now his voice sounded like it might shatter. 10 minutes later, Ava's entire street exploded with flashing lights. She sat frozen in her parked car at the corner, watching police cruisers turn down her block. Sirens screamed, bouncing off the houses she'd always thought were safe. Her stomach twisted. Something was happening at her house. Her house. Dad, she said, answering his next call with shaking hands. The police are here. What's going on? Mark's voice was steady but heavy now. Stay put, Ava. Please. You don't understand how close you were to walking straight into danger. Ava's chest heaved as she turned off her engine and sat in the silence of the car. The glow from the gas station sign flickered across her windshield, casting pale shadows over her face. She felt trapped between two worlds, the one where she could drive home and prove to herself that everything was fine, and the one where she stayed here, obeyed her father, and let fear gnaw at her insides. Her phone buzzed again. Dad, she said, her voice cracking. You have to tell me why I'm sitting here like this. Mark's tone softened, but it didn't lose its urgency. Because if you go into that house tonight, Ava, I don't know if I'll ever see you again. The words hit her like ice water. Her safe little home suddenly felt like a coffin waiting to close. She looked down her street again, heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. The flashing red and blue lights were brighter now, painting the quiet houses in chaos. Ava saw officers stepping out of their cars, some with flashlights, others with weapons drawn. They moved like they had a mission, not a routine check, but a hunt. Her throat went dry. Dad, she whispered, clutching the phone. Is there someone in my house? Silence. Then she heard him inhale sharply on the other end, as though he had been waiting for her to ask. Yes, he said simply. And he wasn't there to steal your TV. Stay where you are. Her whole body started shaking. Ava pressed her forehead against the steering wheel, tears burning in her eyes. This can't be real, she murmured to herself. This doesn't happen in our neighborhood. She thought about the nights she had walked up her driveway, keys jingling, too tired to even glance over her shoulder. Had someone been watching her all this time? Mark's voice came back, quieter now. A neighbor saw him forcing the back door. She called me first, because she knew I'd reach you faster than anyone. I didn't have time to explain, Ava. I just had to keep you away. She let out a sob she didn't know she had been holding. You kept me away, she said. I almost went inside. Minutes dragged like hours as Ava sat frozen in her car. The sound of police radios crackled in the distance, voices sharp and clipped. Then, suddenly, shouting erupted. She jerked her head up just in time to see two officers dragging a man out of her front door. Even from far away, she could see his wild eyes, the way he thrashed against their grip, his hands cuffed behind him. Ava's blood ran cold. This wasn't a random burglar. There was something deliberate about the way he moved, the way he turned his head like he was searching for someone, like he was searching for her. Her phone buzzed again, and she nearly dropped it. "Dad," she said breathlessly. "I see him. They caught him." There was a pause before Mark answered, his voice tight. "Good. Stay where you are until they clear the house. Don't look at him if you can help it." But she couldn't look away. The man's head turned just enough that she saw his face in the flashing lights. His expression was empty, almost calm, but his eyes were locked in her direction, and it made her stomach twist. For the first time in her life, Ava truly understood what it meant to feel hunted. One of the officers finally broke away from the crowd and walked toward her car. He motioned for her to roll the window down. "Miss Miles?" he asked gently. She nodded, gripping the wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. "We've cleared the house," he said. "You're safe now." Ava swallowed hard. Who was he? What was he doing in my house? The officer hesitated, glancing back toward the street where the man was being pushed into a police cruiser. Then he said, quietly, "We found evidence that he wasn't there to rob you. He had photos of you printed out, some from your social media, some taken from outside your house. They were laid out across your coffee table. We also found a knife hidden under your couch. If you had gone inside tonight, we don't think you would have walked back out." Ava's vision blurred as tears filled her eyes. She felt like the air had been punched out of her lungs. "He was waiting for me?" she whispered. The officer nodded grimly. "Yes. We believe he has been following you for weeks. He knew your schedule." Ava pressed her hand against her chest, trying to steady her breathing. She remembered all those little moments, the feeling of being watched as she crossed her driveway, the shadow she thought she saw in her backyard one night. She had brushed them off, told herself she was imagining things, but she hadn't been imagining it. Someone had been there, waiting for her to come home. When her dad finally arrived, Ava didn't even wait for him to park. She jumped out of her car and ran into his arms, sobbing into his shoulder. He held her tight, his firefighter's grip steady and unshakable. "You're safe," he whispered over and over. "That's all that matters. You're safe." She clung to him like she was a little girl again, the fear pouring out of her in hot tears. "Dad, he had pictures of me," she cried. "He was waiting for me." Mark's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "And he didn't get you. That's what matters. You listened to me. You trusted me." They stayed like that for a long time, standing under the harsh glow of the gas station lights while police cars still lined their street. Finally, Ava pulled back, wiping her face. "I can't go back in there tonight," she said shakily. Mark nodded. "You're not going back there tonight. You're coming home with me." Ava hesitated, glancing toward the flashing lights down the road. "What about the house? What about my stuff?" Mark put his hand on her shoulder. "The police will handle it. I'll go back with them tomorrow to collect what you need. But tonight, you're coming with me." Back at her parents' house, Ava sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. Her mom, Sarah, sat beside her, holding her hand, her own eyes red from crying. "You scared us so badly," Sarah whispered. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't listened to your father." Ava swallowed hard. "I almost didn't," she admitted. "I almost went inside. If Dad hadn't called when he did," her voice trailed off. Sarah squeezed her hand. "You're here. That's what matters. We'll figure everything else out." The next morning, the detective called with more details. The man had a record, stalking, breaking into homes, waiting for the women who lived there. He had been watching Ava for weeks, writing down her routines, what time she came home, what time she turned off the lights. The photos on the table weren't just snapshots. They were part of a plan. Ava felt sick as she listened. but beneath the fear was a deep, powerful gratitude. Her father's voice, panicked, urgent, begging her to stay put, had saved her life. As she sat on her parents' porch that night, watching the stars, she whispered to herself, "I'll never ignore that voice again." Because sometimes survival isn't about fighting. Sometimes it's about trusting the person who loves you enough to pull you back from the edge. Ava couldn't bring herself to go back to her house for several days. Each time she pictured the living room, she saw the photos on her coffee table and the knife under the couch. The place she had once called her sanctuary now felt like a crime scene, tainted. Her father went with the police to collect her essentials, clothes, shoes, documents, carefully boxing up what she might need for a while. When he came back, he sat at the kitchen table with her, his big hands folded. "I didn't let you see the pictures," he said quietly. "You don't need those in your head." Ava nodded, grateful but shaken. "I don't ever want to know what else was in that house," she said. "Knowing he was there is enough." Mark reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Then let that be the last time he takes anything from you, even your peace." 2 days later, the detective stopped by in person. Ava sat on the porch with her parents as he explained what they had pieced together. "He had been watching you for at least a month," the detective said gravely. "He learned your shifts. He knew when you came home, when you went for groceries. He even knew which nights you stayed late at the hospital." Ava's stomach churned as she listened. So he was waiting for the perfect night. The detective nodded. "Yes, and last night was going to be it." "Sarah," Ava's mom, gripped her hand tighter. "What's going to happen to him?" she asked softly. "He'll be charged and held," the detective replied. "But what matters most is that you're alive because someone acted fast." That night, Ava sat outside under the stars with her dad. The crickets were loud, the air cooler now, but she couldn't stop replaying everything in her head. Finally, she asked the question she had been holding back. "Dad, how did you stay so calm on the phone? You sounded scared but steady." Mark looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Because if I had sounded panicked, you might have tried to come home anyway. I had to keep you focused on staying away, no matter how much I wanted to yell and run to you myself." Ava swallowed hard. "I almost didn't listen," she admitted. "I almost drove home." Mark nodded, eyes soft. "But you didn't, and that's why you're here." Over the next few days, neighbors stopped by with flowers and food. Some brought cards, others just hugs and words of relief. Everyone kept saying how lucky Ava was, but it didn't feel like luck. It felt like love, raw, urgent love that had picked up the phone at midnight and refused to let go until she was safe. One neighbor, Mrs. Howard, told Ava something that stayed with her. "The moment I saw him forcing your back door, I didn't even think twice. I knew I had to call your dad. I knew he'd know what to do." Ava hugged her, tears brimming again. "You saved me too," she whispered. It dawned on her that a whole chain of people had been part of saving her life. Her neighbor, her dad, the police. She had been protected every step of the way. When Ava finally stepped back into her house with her father a week later, she froze at the doorway. The police had cleared it, wiped it clean, but she still felt the weight of what had happened there. The living room was too quiet, too normal, as if pretending nothing had happened. "Take your time," Mark said gently, standing behind her. She walked in slowly, her fingers brushing the edge of the coffee table where the photos had once been. She could almost see them in her mind, her life laid out for someone else to study. She turned back to her dad. "I want to move," she said quietly. "I can't live here anymore." Mark nodded without hesitation. "Then we'll find you somewhere new, somewhere that feels safe again." Moving out was both heartbreaking and freeing. Ava packed her life into boxes with her parents' help, her mom folding clothes quietly while her dad checked each lock twice. They didn't talk much, just worked together like a team. When the last box was loaded into the truck, Ava stood on the porch one last time, taking in the house she had once loved. "This isn't my home anymore," she said softly. "Home is where I feel safe." Her dad, put an arm around her shoulders. "Then we'll build you a new one," he said. "Stronger this time." Ava nodded, a flicker of determination rising through the fear. She wasn't going to let that night define her. Weeks later, Ava settled into a new apartment with better locks, security cameras, and alarms that chirped softly every time she came home. It wasn't just about keeping danger out anymore. It was about reclaiming peace of mind. One evening, sitting on her new balcony, she called her dad just to say, "Thank you for saving my life." Mark chuckled softly on the other end. "I'll always pick up the phone, Ava. Always." She smiled through tears. That night, she realized that survival had been more than just staying alive. It had been learning when to trust, when to pause, and when to let love guide her out of the dark. And as the city lights twinkled below, Ava whispered to herself, "I'll never ignore that voice again." Because sometimes the difference between life and death is simply choosing to listen. Ava's first nights in the new apartment were uneasy. Every creak of the floorboards, every car passing outside made her heart jump. She would wake up at 3 a.m., staring at the glowing red digits of the clock, her body tense as if still waiting for danger. One evening, she called her father again, unable to sleep. "Dad, I keep thinking about what could have happened," she confessed, her voice trembling. "I keep seeing him there, waiting." Mark stayed quiet for a moment, then said softly, "You're still healing, Ava. That fear will take time to fade, but every night you stay safe, you're winning." She nodded into the phone, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I just want to feel normal again." His answer was steady, reassuring. "You will. And until then, I'll keep answering whenever you call." Therapy became Ava's next step. At first, she was hesitant. Admitting she needed help felt like admitting weakness, but her mom convinced her. "Talking about it doesn't make you fragile," Sarah said. "It makes you stronger." So Ava went, week after week, sitting in the quiet office while her therapist helped her untangle the fear and guilt. "You survived because you listened," the therapist reminded her one session. "You didn't freeze, and you didn't ignore the warning. That was courage, not weakness." Ava held on to those words. Slowly, she noticed her breathing getting steadier, her hands trembling less at night. By the third month, Ava found herself smiling again, real smiles, not just polite ones. She returned to work at the hospital, and her co-workers welcomed her back with warm hugs and homemade cookies. "We missed you," one of the nurses said. Ava felt a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time since that night, she allowed herself to imagine a future not defined by fear. One evening, she invited her parents over for dinner in her new apartment. As they sat around the small table eating takeout, she looked at them and said, "I think I'm ready to make this place a home." Mark smiled, pride shining in his eyes. "That's my girl, stronger than the night that tried to break her." Months later, Ava stood on her balcony as the city glowed under the stars. The memory of that terrible night was still with her, but it no longer controlled her. It had become a line in her life before and after. But on this side of it, she had chosen to grow. She had chosen to trust, to heal, to rebuild. Her phone buzzed with a message from her dad, just checking in. "Proud of you." She smiled through tears, texting back, "I'm proud too. And I'm safe." As she set her phone down, Ava whispered into the quiet night, "Thank you, Dad." Because in the end, it wasn't just his call that saved her. It was the love behind it, the kind of love that sees danger before you do and refuses to let you face it alone. And with that, Ava turned back inside, closing the door not on her fear, but on the night that almost stole everything. Like and subscribe to my channel for more contents like this, and let us know where you are watching from under the comment section.